Hello, my name is Alex Fisher. I'm a Christian Science practitioner living in Paris, France. So actually working in Paris, France, but living just near Paris, in nature, a few kilometers away from Paris, with birds singing and lots of trees. You may even hear the birds behind me. We're not here to talk about birds today. We're here to talk about, well, let me start with a quote, and we'll see what we'll talk about. This quote is from Abraham Lincoln, a great thinker. And he says, "Let us renew our sense of God and move forward in life without fear." What I find interesting is the connection that Lincoln makes between our sense of God, infinite good, and the fact that we can be able to move forward without fear. You may think it's too good to be true, but no, it is absolutely possible. We can absolutely live a life that is fearless. We can absolutely move forward in life without fear. Let's take an example. There was a woman I know, and she was having a medical checkup, routine medical checkup, and there the doctor informed her that she had breast cancer. She says that it was quite a shock. It was very shocking. And also she found herself completely paralyzed with fear. She had 2 children, and she did not want to have her children going through grief of losing a parent. So the first thing she did is that she took time off. She thought she had to take time off to think through ideas to find healing. You may think, well, why didn't she just go to the doctor? Well, she felt that medical treatment would not have an answer for her. She said that she had been practicing meditation for years, and she thought that could be helpful. So she meditated. That's what she was using, lots of meditation. Doing this, she found that she was holding on to some form of anger in her thought. She was really angry about someone. So gradually she was able to overcome that sense of anger and actually find a sense of forgiveness and a sense of freedom. She could also see that gradually she was feeling less afraid to lose her life. There was some form of more calm in her thoughts. Still, she was really battling a sense of fear. So she remembered a friend of her who had done research in spiritual healing and was really interested by early Christian healing. So she called him, and so she explained what I was doing. And so the guy said, her friend said, "Well, let me give you a book." And that book was Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, the author being Mary Baker Eddy, the discoverer of Christian Science. So she took the book and she began to read it. She says that she kind of read randomly, a paragraph here and there, but she felt that when she read the ideas, it is more than the ideas were resonating with her. She felt, and she said that she felt she was reading her own thought. She knew that there was a way forward. She knew that she could find her oneness with the infinite, that God did not send that cancer, that God did not create some form of probation for her, that actually God was infinite good, infinite love, that she was fully united to that sense of love. So it felt good. So she said she read that book every single day, and maybe pondering ideas, deeply meditating those ideas would be more accurate. It was not casual reading, it was really immersing ourselves in the ideas. And as she did, she found a stronger sense of her unity with infinite spirit that we call God. Still, one day, she felt she needed more help because she was still battling with some sense of fear. I mean, things were better, but she was still afraid, and the condition was still really, really troubling her. So she called back that friend who gave her the book, and this man was interested in all types of healings, and asked for the name of a practitioner, because the man had mentioned a Christian Science practitioner, someone who can help and support healing through prayer. So she resolved to call that practitioner, and happened to be that practitioner at the other hand of the phone. And I really remember this phone call when one afternoon this lady called, and she was somewhat defensive at first, because she said, I'm really not into religion. Like, she did not want to sign on into joining any club, but she was deeply spiritual. So it was really easy to quickly reassure her that Christian Science is really about going back to the simplicity, the freedom, the power and the strength of Jesus' ideas, the ideas in the Bible, that all together make a very coherent system of healing, a very coherent way to logically understand more of our relationship with the divine, with the infinite. A book that makes us understand that our consciousness is intimately linked with our experience. It's not the body out there and our thought there, that the way we think, the way we open our thought to a better understanding of God does have an impact. So we talked about those lines, and I say I would agree to pray. Later on, the lady said that she was surprised that during our phone call, all we discussed was God, infinite life. I didn't ask about symptoms. I didn't ask about how long it's been going on, where it was located, what the doctor had said. She says, I was surprised we didn't talk about symptoms at all. All we talked about was God, but she was happy with that. And so she would continue with her reading, and when she felt there was a need, she would send me an email or call me, and I would pray about it. So it lasted about 3 months. And about 3 months after, one morning, the lady says she woke up. She woke up with a deep conviction. She says, in her words, I knew I was healed. But it was more than a physical impression. It was something deeper. In a way, she knew, she was clear about her oneness with this infinite. She was clear about her oneness with infinite love, and that was crystal clear in her thought. And she says that with this realization, it's as if a big burden left her shoulder. She felt light, she felt she had strength, she felt joy. She got up, she realized that the lump was gone, there was no more pain. She was just excited, and she decided for the first time to go for a jog. So she went running, and she was free. You can imagine her like leaping with joy. You can imagine her transformation for the first period of 3 months, the beginning of those 3 months, where she said she was paralyzed with fear when she just had the diagnosis. Fear was so strong that she could not even think. And her now leaping with joy, jogging with joy, absolutely free, spiritually and physically. It's been several years now, and this lady still enjoys her freedom. Obviously, she shared those ideas with neighbors and friends, and she's as free as ever. And her great discovery was that God never sends challenges, but actually a better understanding of our relationship with the infinite frees us from challenges. You know, there's a saying in the Bible, more than a saying, it is Jesus speaking, and he says in the Gospel of Luke, he says, fear not, little flock. It is your Father's pleasure to give you the kingdom. Fear not, little flock. It is your Father's pleasure to give you the kingdom. To me, it says a lot about fear. There's a temptation to battle fear, sometimes to give up to when fear is too big. Let's imagine like a big warehouse. Imagine like very big warehouse. And this warehouse is, all windows are closed. It's completely dark inside. And let's say you have one warehouse in the middle of Michigan in the United States. Another warehouse as dark, maybe in Johannesburg, over there, middle of the city. And then another one in, I don't know, in Canada or in Australia, maybe in Sydney, another big dark warehouse. Warehouse is very, very dark. Let's imagine we walk to the warehouse, and maybe at night, we open the doors, all dark. And we stand there in the middle of the warehouse with all this darkness, all this darkness. How do we get rid of the darkness? Do we need some high technology device to kind of swallow the darkness? How do we get rid of darkness? Well, if we have a little match, the smallest match, we crack the match, will begin to dissolve the darkness. And it will dissolve it whether that darkness is in Michigan, Australia, South Africa, wherever it is, because darkness is always the same thing. Fear is like darkness. Fear is our perception of the absence of God, infinite good. And the minute we perceive a tiny bit more our relationship with the infinite, to that degree, fear begins to dissolve. That's what happened with this lady. If I'm using the examples of warehouses in different cities, is that sometimes we feel, well, I'm really right to be afraid about this. My fear is very different because this is very serious. This physical condition is very serious. Or we may think, well, no, this has nothing to do with this. This is very serious there. I'm about to lose my job, and that's very serious. And I'm not saying it doesn't look serious. All I'm saying is that darkness is darkness, fear is fear, and the way to find our freedom is to open the light in our thought, to open the light to God, which is infinite light, and find the light within that dissolves the darkness. So practically, how do we get rid of it? Well, we touched on it a bit with this lady, but is there a consistent way where we can actually get rid of fear? I feel the question is almost misleading because it's never about getting rid of fear. It's always about understanding more our relationship with God. First, we can put down a few theories. There is a theory that says that basically fear is a chemical reaction in the brain, and that's kind of the give up theory. It's kind of give up, guys. It's a chemical reaction in the brain. The theory says there is nothing you can do about it. You can live with it. A second theory attached to it says, well, fear is actually helpful. Helps you, the flight or fright, this whole theory. Well, I found in my experience that more wisdom, spiritual intuition, a sense of direction, a stronger sense of God as infinite truth leads us where I need to be led without fear, leads us out of darkness, out of disease, without a need for fear. So, in Christian Science, fear is useless. We don't need fear. We have no business with fear. We're not born with fear. We're not being naive. We're not saying that we're not faced with fear. But we're saying that let's not give up. Let's see this light in those warehouses, because a bit of light gets all the darkness out, or actually replaces the darkness by light, and more light actually makes everything clear and free. So when we're faced with difficulty, the temptation is to battle. Maybe we feel inspired by this healing. We say, well, I've got fear in my life. I want to really do something. And we have a sense of personal strength. Well, I'm saying this now because that's not a way to start. If we ask Jesus how he was healing, he never said that he was very strong. He said, I can do nothing of my own self. So I like to think of it as a switch. If we are staying with the image of light, if we're in a room which is dark, our job is not to battle the darkness, to use Bible citations or prayer to battle the darkness, or even pleading. Our job is just to find the switch, because the minute we find the switch, the light goes on. So we are not the light, we're not the switch. Our job is just in a way to turn our thought towards the infinite, to be willing to consider our relationship to God, and that's us turning the switch on. And it has very practical consequences. We can feel when we have more peace. We can feel that sense of calm in the middle of turbulence, and that's what the light does. John says, God is light. So now you may say, well, it's all very good, Mr. Fisher, but what about something very tangible? What about maybe I got no more money, or I'm afraid to lose my job, and yeah, I understand about switching on the light, but how do we do in those situations? Well, this lack of money. I think Jesus is the perfect example. Perfect example because he was somewhat leading a moral life, a normal life. He was eating, he was talking to others, he was traveling, he had to be fed and eat. And of course, he was unique because he was expressing the fullness of the Christ, that unique relationship with God. Jesus was revealing to us that we are at one with the infinite. And then we also can discover our status as children of God, as children of light. So he was unique. Still, he had to go with his daily day. And he says something interesting it's in Matthew. Actually, in response about people around him being worried, and they say, well, what about job? What about what will we eat? And specifically, he says, I quote, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or what you will drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Look at the birds in the air. Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them." Then goes on, "And why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. Yet, I tell you, even Solomon, in all his glory, was not clothed like one of these." By the way, Solomon was seen as the richest man on earth, so you can imagine how beautifully he was dressed. So to me, Jesus says a few things in there. Number one, he says, suffering is not normal. Spirituality does not equal suffering or being a victim. Spirituality means what Jesus says when he says, "Fear not, little flock. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." So this understanding of God doesn't provide us with a very small shack in the wood. It's the kingdom, this universal sense of harmony, this sense of abundance. So Jesus says, no suffering, abundance is standard. But then he says something very interesting in relationship to employment and money. He actually makes a distinction between our employment and our income. Look, when he says, look at the birds, they neither sow nor reap, and they got everything they need. Our supply, our abundance, our satisfaction comes from understanding more our relationship with the infinite. God is providing right now. Our job is just to discover it, in a way to yield to this truth that infinite love supplies all good. And that's autonomous, that's efficient in itself, it doesn't need any more. And actually, Jesus makes a very specific point. He says, you may think that your own effort, your sweat, is what produces income. But actually he says, look at the birds. They don't sweat. They do nothing, so to speak, at least in this image. And they got everything they need. So our source of income is God, not our work. Then you may say, well, fine, so I just spend my life next to a swimming pool and do nothing, and then it'll fall out of the sky. This is not what Jesus says. Our employment is linked to what Jesus says about our main priority in life is to love God above all and to love our neighbors as ourselves. The golden rule. Love others, love God. That's our employment. That's our full employment. So to the degree that we understand more our relationship with the infinite and we live that relationship, first we understand it, then we live it. And how do we live it? By being helpful. And business, the core of business, the substance of business, of employment, is really to render valuable service to mankind. So sometimes you may think, well, my business gives the money, but actually there are two distinct ideas. So when one is faced with lack, whatever it is, the solution is not necessarily to run to try to earn more, but to, in a way, in the spirit of Psalm 46, which says, be still and know that I am God. We're not God, we're receiver of divine supply. You know, a few years ago, I had moved job in a different country. And I was very diligent into seeing how much my salary would be and make sure I would have enough money to pay for rent and stuff. And then I accepted the job. It was an exciting job and it was good. As I moved in, I realized that there was a small thing I didn't take into account was the standard of living. And the standard of living was really way higher than where I was employed before. And my salary was barely covering what I was needed. I was struggling a bit. It was not easy. So those ideas helped me overcome my fear. Those ideas helped me overcome my sense of stupidity in not doing my homework. We're never stuck. We're never stuck. There's always an idea God speaks to us in ideas, and there's always an idea that can take us in different direction. Just like a GPS. None of us would think, I have a GPS, I hope I don't misunderstand the direction because then I'm stuck. No, we know that if the GPS says, move forward for 3 minutes, if we turn right, the GPS will say, okay, fine, turn around and go again. So there's always an idea. We're never stuck. So I was praying about those ideas, about the idea of the being clothed like the lilies. Jesus says that, no, we're not set up for suffering. God doesn't send suffering. The opposite, our understanding of our relationship with infinite love does bring a sense of release and does clothe us physically, spiritually. Next thing I know, at the office, there's a woman that I knew from work relationship that asked me if I could help her move because she was going back to her home and she needed to help to move her. She had a small apartment she needed help to move. What's interesting is that I took seriously my job, and my job was and is for all of us to express love, to express generosity. So I said yes, and maybe I didn't have the time because I said maybe I should have felt I need to find more ideas to find more money, but it felt right to express generosity because our employment always comes with enormous resources. That resource of peace and sense of love and satisfaction. So I said yes, I will help. So it was not a big apartment, but it was really well furnished. A nice sofa. There was 2 sofas. There was in the kitchen. There were really nice knives, like beautiful knives, and there was a little wood stand and stuff. It was just fancy. There was her stuff. To my surprise, the lady said, Alex, when I moved to this part of to this city, in these small apartments, I recreated kind of a replica of my apartment back at home. So I have everything twice now. I got 2 sofas, this one here, the other one at home. The knives there that you were looking, got the same at home. So she said, thank you for helping. And you can take anything you want. And actually, if you were to take the entire apartment, that would be fine because it would be a relief for her. It would be less to bring home to sell. So I could not believe it. And so I thank her for her generosity. And obviously I didn't take the whole apartment, but that sofa is still in one of my homes. The knives are, anyway, it was to me an example of God providing. There are several ways to look at the Bible. You can say this is obsolete text, or you can actually just get the dust out of it and say, no, actually, this is deep, spiritual, meaningful ideas that you can practice and see fruits in our life. And that was an example. So we need not to worry when the paycheck is not coming, or we fear that the paycheck may not come. Our solution is about, in a way, getting out of the picture to let God speak to us. I like the image of the window, that it's as if we're all windows that sometimes is a bit dirty, and dirty with a sense of ego, a sense of I'm going to do something, a sense of maybe a bit of willfulness or pride or something. Our job is to get rid of those things, to realize they're not part of our identity, so that we can let the light shine through us. So it's not about acquiring more light, it's about letting the light shine more through us. Fear comes in all types of ways. At the root of it is always the belief that we can be disconnected from God, from infinite love. And the minute we rediscover, even just gradually, this connection, that minute we can see actually tangible fruits in our life. So we've talked about the fear of disease. We've talked about the fear of lacking money, or lacking anything, as a matter of fact. It can be lacking employment, lacking a business opportunity, any sense of lack. There's another type of fear, another warehouse that brings to our thoughts suggestions of confusion and lack of direction. Sometimes we may even have a sense of God and a sense of, I know that God governs, but I feel stuck. I don't know what to do. My circumstances changed. We see recently with the epidemics or any other human situation, sometimes we may find ourselves in a situation where really we have no clue. We don't know what to do, where to go. In those situations, I really like to turn to the Bible. And there's a psalm, for example. It's not a recipe, it's just an idea that I find very helpful. Many of you know it. It's Psalm 23. It says, "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right path for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. To me, this psalm is very reassuring. Again, it tells us we don't have to accept fear or its baby brother, confusion. We can expect the light. We don't even have to act with fear or to act with confusion. It's not about the least of two evil. We can absolutely expect, and the standard is perfection, a sense of clarity about moving forward. One day I was at the office and my boss came to see me, and she had a sense of urgency, and she says, Alex, you're going to stop everything you're doing right now this morning, everything you had planned, you've got to stop it. The client wants something very specific and he's very strong about it. You got to work on this. So she explained it was legal stuff I had to do, some legal research and analysis. And so I said, fine, thank you. And I was a bit surprised with a sense of urgency, but in a way I felt, well, I'll stick to this. So as I was half an hour into the job, something within that may be hard to describe, but maybe you felt it too, a little voice within. Some people will call it, actually the same thing is called in many ways, a little voice within, a gut feeling, a spiritual intuition, a sense of that feels right. Something that was clearly not my thought, that was just there knocking at the door of my consciousness. Some people call this angels. So I had this spiritual intuition that I needed to stop working on what was required and do something else. I was conflicted because I felt, well, if I don't do the job, I'm going to be in trouble. But at the same time, I had learned first from the prophets in the Bible and from my own life experience to trust that intuition, to trust that spiritual intuition that actually always lead us in the right direction. And to me, this is what the psalm alludes to when it says, he leads me beside still waters. And I knew by experience that listening to this still small voice always brings good and actually takes us out of trouble. So I will be honest, I took some time to battle in thought, and then I yielded. And I think yielding is a key word. It's never about us doing more. It's about yielding to our sense of the divine. So I yielded, and I said, fine. And but I had a sense of peace about it. So I worked on something else that felt right. That was not related to this. It was for the same client, but it was really clearly not urgent. But I worked on it. And I worked on it for quite a while. And by mid-morning, the boss came back and with the same face of urgency, but with a different request this time. And she says, trouble. Change of order. Forget completely the first assignment. Now we have to work on this. This is super urgent. And she described a different assignment. As she was talking, I could feel my heart pounding because I felt, my gosh, I was seeing her lips like explaining, looking at my desk. The thing was done on my desk. That's exactly the thing that I had been doing. So I said, hey, I've done it. She said, what? It's done. She looked at it. She was amazed and ran back to her office. And later, not only I got the congratulations from her, and she was really impressed, and but her boss called me directly into the office, which was super rare, to congratulate me. The light is never our light. Our job is just to let the light go. And if I had not listened to this intuition, well, I would have been in a different situation. So we're never stuck. I think we're only stuck into thinking that we are in charge of the solution. But to me, which is not the case, but to me what Jesus says when he says, fear not, little flock, it is your Father's pleasure to give you the kingdom. Calling us little flock, to me, refers to Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. So we're not the shepherd. We're here to listen, and sometimes it's clear very fast. Sometimes we have to wait until a tiny bit, but the key thing is we know we don't have to fear and we can expect direction. Obviously, listening means total yielding. So I find in my experience that when I'm faced with direction challenges, I need to let go of my strong sense of direction. If I'm a college student and I say, oh, I really want to go to this big university, this amazing university, and I'm praying about it, honestly, I need to let go of that, not a desire for this university. I think a desire, wish is always right, but this willful sense that I want to be there and nowhere else. So I want to marry that guy. Oh, I want to have 5 children. Whatever our sense of right is, we can keep all those wishes, but in order to pray right, we need to yield to the better plan. Because countless people I found that when they leave this state of confusion toward this sense of direction and clarity, sometimes it's surprising that at the end of the road, yes, they have a sense of satisfaction and their needs are met in really very precise and complete ways, but sometimes not exactly in the way that it was supposed to be, or in the way that they thought they would. So we never have to go along with fear or lack of confusion. In a way, our job is to know that there is a switch, and then we can find the switch. Finding the switch sometimes takes a second. We just find the switch and boom, we got this, in a way, this sense of light that comes very quickly. Other time, we struggle a bit to find the switch, but I find it helpful to know that there is a switch, and this switch is our better understanding of our divine Father, for all of us, universal love. You know, the lady who I said discovered Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy, I said discovered because she brought it into light, but really Christian Science is going back to what Jesus was saying, is going back to the Bible, but shading on it a scientific, in the sense of a logical, practical light that makes those teaching alive in our lives. And she wrote in her book, you know, the book that the lady earlier read every day, Science and Health, we keep the scriptures. And she has something to say that I think is very interesting and relevant now. She says, and I quote, "Happiness is spiritual, born of truth and love." Happiness is spiritual, born of truth and love. Those are synonyms for God. God as truth, infinite reality, and love. And she goes on, "It is unselfish, therefore it cannot exist alone, but requires all mankind to share it." So the point is not about us getting stuff with this great discovery. What I find is that the more we switch on the light, the more light there is for everyone else. The more we understand our connection with the infinite, the more light there is in our life, the more it blesses everyone. So it is never a selfish endeavor. It's about doing more good, helping more. And it does help at micro level within our family or maybe our home, but also in our school, our offices, our city, our country, and even our world. Because there is never a darkness that is beyond light reach. And through prayer, we can always find this sense of peace, this sense of our unity with the divine, and it always bear fruits.